You felt it this morning, a scratchy throat, maybe a headache. So you reached into your medicine cabinet, grabbed a pill, swallowed it with water, and moved on with your day. You didn't even think twice. But that pill, that one small white tablet, contains something your ancestors would have literally killed for. And the story of how humans survived sickness before that pill existed is stranger, darker, and more remarkable than anything they teach in school. Getting sick 50,000 years ago wasn't just uncomfortable. It was a death sentence, unless your tribe did something about it. And what they did will change the way you see medicine forever. Let's start with something that should be impossible. In 2017, researchers excavating a burial site in Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq made a discovery that changed what we know about Neanderthals. FYI, Neanderthals are our ancient human relatives who lived in Europe and Asia until about 40,000 years ago. They found the remains of a man who had lived to around 40 to 50 years old, which is pretty old by Neanderthal standards. But what shocked scientists wasn't his age. It was the state of his bones. His right arm had been amputated. He was partially blind. He had severe arthritis throughout his spine and joints. He could not have hunted. He could not have gathered food. By every measure of survival, he should have died decades before he did. His tribe fed him, cared for him, protected him for years. People caring for each other is the oldest evidence of healthcare on Earth. Caring for the sick didn't start with hospitals. It started around a fire 60,000 years ago. But care wasn't the only weapon they had. They had plants. Long before anyone understood bacteria or viruses or inflammation, humans were learning through trial and error, through observation, through thousands of deaths. Which plants made you feel better, and which ones killed you? The evidence is written in the archaeological record. Otzi the Iceman, the 5,300-year-old mummy found frozen in the Alps, was carrying a medical kit when he died. Inside it were 2 pieces of birch polypore mushrooms, strung on a leather cord. For years, scientists didn't understand why. Then they analyzed the mushrooms. Birch polypore contains compounds with antibiotic and anti-inflammatory properties. Otzi also had intestinal parasites, and the mushroom he carried has been shown in modern studies to have anti-parasitic effects. He wasn't carrying them as decoration. He was treating himself. But Otzi is only 5,300 years old. The relationship between humans and medicinal plants goes back much, much further. Archaeologists studying Neanderthal dental plaque found traces of plants with no nutritional value at a site called El Sidron in Spain. Among them, yarrow and groundsel, both of which have documented medicinal properties. The Neanderthals weren't eating them for calories. They were eating them because they worked. This was at least 50,000 years ago. And willow bark. Humans have been chewing willow bark for at least 3,500 years, documented in ancient Egyptian medical papyri. The active compound in willow bark is salicin. Your body converts salicin into salicylic acid. In 1897, chemists at Bayer synthesized a stable version of that compound. They called it aspirin. The pill in your medicine cabinet is the same molecule your ancestors pulled off a tree. Now here's where it gets darker. When plants weren't enough, ancient humans went further, much further. In 2018, researchers studying a Neolithic skull found in Spain made a discovery that shocked the medical world. The skull, which was around 5,000 years old, had been cut open, not by injury, by a human hand with a stone tool. It showed signs of healing, meaning the person survived. This practice is called trepanation, the oldest known surgical procedure in human history, and it has been found on every inhabited continent. Skulls with cut open holes, some healed, some not, have been found in Peru, France, Russia, China, and across Africa. The oldest examples are over 7,000 years old. What were they treating? Researchers believe it was used for severe headaches, seizures, mental illness, skull fractures, anything that seemed to involve the head. The idea that something inside the skull was causing the problem, and that cutting it open might help, was ancient humans reverse engineering a problem they couldn't fully see. And the survival rate was not negligible. Studies of Neolithic trepanation skulls suggest that somewhere between 50% and 90% of patients survived, based on bone regrowth visible around the edges of the cuts. These weren't guesses. They were practiced procedures, passed down through generations. But there was someone in charge of all of this, someone who knew which plants to use, how to cut a skull, and when to do which. The shaman. In virtually every hunter-gatherer society that anthropologists have ever studied, there is a single figure who sits at the intersection of medicine and the supernatural. The shaman, healer, or medicine man, depending on the culture. They were the most critical specialist in the group. Where a hunter's knowledge kept the tribe fed for a week, the shaman's knowledge could keep them alive for a generation. A 2021 study published in PLOS One analyzed grave sites from the Natufian culture in the eastern Mediterranean, dating back roughly 12,000 years. One burial stood out. The body was a woman in her 40s. Buried with her were the remains of over 50 tortoise shells, parts of an eagle, a leopard, a wild boar, a cow, and the foot of a human being. The researchers concluded she was almost certainly a shaman. The most carefully buried person at the site was the healer. These people weren't just mixing herbs. They were the memory of their community. They carried the accumulated medical knowledge of dozens of generations, passed down through practice, story, and ritual. Lose the shaman, and the tribe lost its entire medical library in a single death. And then there was fever. Modern medicine spent decades trying to suppress fever aggressively. Ice baths, medications to drive the temperature down immediately. It turns out this was wrong. Fever is not your body malfunctioning. It is your immune system turning up the heat to kill pathogens that can't survive above a certain temperature. Ancient humans understood this intuitively, not in scientific terms. Ethnographic studies of living hunter-gatherer groups show a consistent pattern. When someone develops a fever, they are moved closer to the fire and kept warm, not cooled down. Their bodies are allowed to burn. Only in the last century did we discover the immunological mechanism that explains why that was the right instinct all along. Your ancestors didn't have germ theory, but 300,000 years of dying from infection taught them what worked. The knowledge was coded, not in books, but in behavior. Here's what makes all of this quietly devastating. Researchers estimate that roughly 25% of children in ancient hunter-gatherer societies died before the age of 5. Mostly from infection and disease. And yet, the species survived. It survived because of the birch mushroom and the willow bark. Because of the shaman and the trepanation. Because of the tribe that refused to abandon the man with no arm and failing eyes in Shanidar Cave. The next time you swallow an aspirin, you are completing a line that stretches back 50,000 years, back to someone crouched in a cave, chewing the bark of a tree, not knowing why it helped, only knowing that it did. We didn't invent medicine. We inherited it. And most of this knowledge was discovered accidentally. No laboratories, no clinical trials, no understanding of bacteria or viruses. Just human beings trapped in a brutal cycle. Someone gets sick, someone tries something, most of the time it fails. But occasionally, it doesn't. And when it worked, the information survived longer than the person who discovered it. That's what medicine originally was, not science. Memory. Even now, humanity is constantly testing, observing, adjusting, and passing knowledge forward. The difference is that today, the experiments are hidden behind white walls and scientific language. But underneath it all, it's still the same species trying to survive long enough to understand itself. CTA. If this video made you look at your medicine cabinet differently, hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the hidden history of being human. And drop a comment. What's one ancient remedy you'd actually try? I read every one. Thanks for watching.